This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we're calling the Audit and Finance Committee meeting for August 11th to order. Skip the chairman's comments, and I guess we'll open it up. We all got a copy of the Audit and Finance Committee minutes for the 14th of July. Any of the members have any comments, questions, or changes to those minutes?
No.
Okay, so Megan, I suppose you want to hold off and take a vote on that when we have the correct number of folks.
Yeah, we only have 4 members right now, so we need 5 to vote.
Okay, so we also, if there's no changes or adds or modifications there, we'll hold off on the vote until we get another member. We'd also move on to the bills. We'll do the same thing. We'll review that, see if there's any questions or comments with respect to those bills. And I had one. Does any of the other group have any comments?
Shaver Avenue controlled tree.
Yeah, so the tree, she had more branches that fell off that tree again. So that's the one that borders the rail yards. So it's off of Chestnut Street.
There's a couple of short little runs.
Yeah.
To us.
Yeah. Okay.
We actually, in some ways, got lucky because Oneonta Fence kind of dropped the ball and they never went and fixed her fence.
Right.
And so he called me, he apologized. They fixed her fence this week. So we're actually kind of lucky that he didn't fix it the first time because
We'd have to
we'd have to do it again. So that invoice is not actually on there, but I believe it was
Megan and or others, while the controlled tree cut was out there, were there any other potential limbs that looked like they were suspect?
So if you recall, the first time that he went out there from controlled tree cut, I think it was like $5,000-6,000. He said that he wanted to cut down 3 trees, whole trees that were out there that were dead. And I think the board kind of decided that it was easier to pay a $300 bill than to pay a $5,000 bill for a piece of property that we could potentially be selling. So if I could get another estimate from a different company to go out there and look at those trees again, and then we'd have a couple bids that we could go through, or we could just continue to fix her fence.
How much is the fence?
The fence is $650.
So we'd be $800. So far, we'd be $800 on tree limbs and $650 on the fence.
Correct. That's correct.
It won't be hard to get a couple thousand if something comes down. I mean, I once again, I want to spend the money for the trees, but I don't want to rebuild fences or houses or something they fall on. If it was our property and it was, I want to look at it, but if it's our property and, that risk was there, I mean, I'd probably pay to have it taken down just so they don't fall down and break things.
I don't know what controlled tree cut is. I just have 3 massive cherry trees taken down
Right.
in front of my house.
I guess I would go back to Megan's comment. It doesn't hurt to get a couple other estimates.
I called Jeff. He's taking 2 down for me next week. So
Yeah, down.
for
Yeah.
$3,200.
Yeah.
Big trees
Okay.
He would be about
in an
half
area
of that.
where they could fall on something.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you want to just give me his number before you leave, I'll get that one, and I'll do another.
He's good. He does a good job.
Was that your question, Jeff, about Schaefer Ave?
No. Anybody else have any other?
No, set.
Firefighter, the 24-hour alarm monitoring.
Yeah.
Tell me what that represents. Is that a monthly fee, an annual fee? When did that go into effect?
That's an annual fee. I believe this is the 3rd year, maybe the 2nd or 3rd year.
Okay.
What that does is if no one's in the building, that alerts the fire department that there's a fire.
Understood. It's the electronic. Yeah, I got it. But that's an annual fee there, right?
Annual fee, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Upstate Leadership Sponsorship for TEDx, Oneonta.
So we did that last year as well. That's in September. They do a TEDx up at SUNY. They asked us to be a sponsor again this year.
What's the topic?
I don't know the topics
I
this
just
year,
got
but usually it's
something.
about 5 different people.
It's usually 5 or 6 different.
We've actually done it, I think, for 4 years now.
Oh,
I was gonna say it's been going on. I
Yeah.
guess they didn't do it last year or 2 years ago. with
2 years
COVID,
ago,
but-
yeah.
Okay, those are the questions I had.
I have no other questions.
It looks like, is Craig on?
No.
Craig
Well,
is there.
Oh, yeah, there he is. Hi,
Yep.
Craig.
Craig is here. Okay, so if you want to vote on minutes.
Yeah, with Craig, we kind of quickly reviewed. Do you have any questions or comments on the minutes for July 14th?
Can you go over everything all over again? Okay.
Very fun. Other than,
Oh, you should never ask that question in a board meeting, Jeff. Come on, you know better than that. I'm fine.
Okay, and
As
Andrew,
long as
welcome.
Dave votes yes, I go right along with him.
We're July 14th meeting minutes are up for vote right now. Looking for a motion to approve.
so moved.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Also, secondarily, we've got the bills that have been. We just walked through the bills. If there are no other questions, I think we vetted the questions. But if there are no other questions, I'm looking for a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? I wouldn't think so. Okay. Thank you. Review of financials. Jody, anything you'd like to go through specifically with the financials at this point?
No, they're pretty self-explanatory. There's nothing out of the ordinary.
I know, so one of the changes with regard to Corning. That, from last year to this year. Just standard, I mean, it's
Oh, the advantage in terms of
Yeah.
the pilot.
the payment. That was the only change that I really saw significant.
Yeah, for budgeted in the 2022, that's their annual payment, whereas last year it was actually full payment.
Right, exactly. Other than that, I didn't see anything that was.
So my only question as I look at this, sorry, these are in a format that, is year-to-date for operating revenue and charges for services. We have an adopted budget for 22. We say year-to-date we're at 103, but there's no detail below in terms of, or is that's just a sum total then? No, it's on the charges for pilots line. Do you see what I'm saying? On the very first page. So you've got a year-to-date charges for services, but nothing below in terms of where that 103 came from.
The 103, it actually came from the first 6 months. So.
Yeah,
it's a
but
year to-
the specific, I think she's asking the specific line items.
Right, so you've got a budgeted line item. You got budgeted line items here, but you have nothing here to let us know where that 103 has come in
okay,
from,
correct.
just so we see what's outstanding versus what is. Any issues or concerns you have with the current budget and revenue stream?
No, this year we're gonna do well. We're still waiting for the $150,000 from the state development reimbursement, and the county approved the 75,000, so that'll bring in roughly another 225,000. We'll talk about the 2023 budget, which is a little bit more difficult.
Just the Hardwick solar array, there was a pilot involved in that, correct?
There was going to be a pilot. The county requested that we enter into a pilot agreement. They initially were in contact with us. They sent us what they thought was an appropriate amount.
This is the solar at the company.
Right. And then it got into an issue between their attorneys and the construction team. And there were changes in the state law affecting solar. They were those changes to go into effect. So as of February, I have not heard back.
That's been a long time since the initial meeting, because I was here at the initial meeting. Just, it's really interesting. We don't know, obviously, something would have to happen, almost instantaneous for anything to take place this fall.
The artworks consultant that was working on it, he claims that they're still gonna go ahead with it. Doesn't know what himself.
Well, that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, because is that just to conclude that point, that potential 2023 budget to the end or not? Too early to know.
Included any solar projects. You know, I mean, that would certainly be a windfall if they went ahead with it.
Any other questions or specifics on the review of the current financials?
No.
New and unfinished business, Jody?
The only thing I have is I started working on the 2023 budget. Right now, I'm showing still a deficit of about $60,000. I'm trying to figure out a way to plug that. Obviously, the county came up with more money. Right now, I've only budgeted $75,000 that they appropriated this year. Hopefully, that number will increase. And if we had another solar project, that certainly would be a positive thing.
Jody, what's that gap right now? Did you say 60,000?
Yeah,
Yes.
right now it's about 60,000. And obviously,
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm planning on going back to the next IGA meeting and trying to push for additional financing.
Okay. I'm just thinking that would be good to present that deficit, as a part of the request. So at least, it's clear to the county board that, the 75, that next year's budget has some challenges, and that another 60,000 would help plug that hole. I mean, if we could try to, I know you made a larger request than that, but maybe there's a middle step to this where, you're trying to say, hey, the gap is 60 to 75,000. We really need, 135, 150,000 to be in, good footing next year. So I just, if you wanted to try to pick a middle step, I'm not sure what the response is to the larger number yet. I haven't been able to get a sense.
How about some of the rest of us go to me? Or
Is this where I bring up that conversation? It's just preference.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll hijack this part of it. We run our business by tracking everything and dare to compare ourselves to industry average and making sure we're above it in every measurement. We are a 20 group. We compare numbers with 20 dealers all over across the country, learn from each other and get better. My question becomes, you talked about best practices. What we have offered in our industrial park and everything else, can we enter into some analysis of where we stand to compete? Are we in the game? Do we have assets, resources, property ready? There's no reflection on Jody, but I think it would, in my mind, have a better idea of where we're going if we knew where we were compared to, because competition is the biggest influence on the outcome of everything we touch. And so are we competitive? Do we have, does everyone around us, or majority or 60%, have a building, a spec building, or I don't know what it is. We have limits, no gas and electric and other things, but we all, on the other side, we have hospitals and interstate and an airport. So, it isn't as if we have no assets, but how do we compare with other upstate IDAs? And is there a target industry that we're better in position to compete for? Or we're doing a great job responding to people and grow a local company, which we should do. But to get into competition for other industries, bringing them in, what does it take to get to the starting line? In my mind, I've had things at work that took me a year to get ready to roll out because I wasn't ready, and it doesn't, all it was waste money if I rolled it out before we were ready to handle it. So I'd like it. I would suggest that we consider, is there a way to have an assessment? Does somebody do it? Can we do it? How do we compare? Because we don't know that. We don't know really what our best investment of the next 6 months is without comparison, in my mind. Dare to grade ourselves.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and obviously we do the same thing, so I get where you're coming from. I'm just trying to understand in my mind, wrap my head around, like, how do you do that in this environment when you're not really, it's never apples to apples, right? Given your assets and resources. And going back, I'm thinking Jeff and Craig might remember too. I think it was perhaps before Jody, where there was, it was actually before me, right? There was kind of an assessment through the strategic planning process that was done that kind of brought to light the resources and assets to be utilized. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if there was any comparison in there. I don't think there was.
Well, yeah, we did our SWOT, but compared to what? That's where the next step of using that information to make value out of it is, all right, what are the people around us? Where do they sit? What cards are they holding at the table, when we're betting for this next job or whatever? I don't know the answers, but without beginning to define some of what is, I don't know how we figure out how to get from here to there if we don't know where here is. Competitive, because other people, or we target some other industry, or we find out we have.
Yeah, I think the industry selection is
What's that?
I think the industry selection that we are most primed to track.
That's what I mean. If we figure out where we sit, it would give us a better idea what we could be compatible with. That makes sense. And then go to the county and discuss, okay, here's what we have. We need resources to begin to set this up and get ready. Could take 5 years or whatever, but at least we're on the way to something for which we could get a return on our efforts.
Yeah, and I mean, feel free to jump in, guys. I mean, the one thing I'm kind of looking at Jody here a bit too, is understanding like that was what set forth by you 2 years ago, where it was with that clustering and the electronics and really where the acceleration center is going.
And we have some games with that.
That's the vision, or that's the strategic play here. Now, is that really the best play is the question in the end.
Yeah,
given all that.
We do one or two things too, but yes, correct.
I think there's initially when Tom raised this 2 days ago, he was focusing on our industrial parks. And so I started doing an analysis for the board of what the problems are with our district.
Speak up a little bit, because they can as well.
So if you look at the Oneonta rail yards, right now we have an estimate of over $4 million to put in roads, water, sewer. To upgrade the electric to be competitive would be another $2 million. And we have no natural gas to supply them. So those are the constraints right now. With the Oneonta Business Park, we can't even upgrade the electric. I said there's no upgrades because the substations can't be upgraded. So we're not as competitive with other counties when it comes to looking at a distribution center. Also,
It's in projects.
But I think there's like two avenues you can take with that, right? It's fine to identify your constraints, but I think it's also understanding what do we have and what does that best align with in terms of an industry or
somewhere in this is
right. Exactly. So instead of always focusing on what we can't do or what we aren't competitive in, and then I think there's also the opportunity to look at, given the other area business parks in upstate New York, what do they offer, right? And so are they the same as us, where we're competing directly, so they have the same constraints and the same assets, or are they able to offer some of the things that we can't, which they might be attracting slightly different businesses? So we may not even be apples to apples competitive, attracting the same industry. And I think the key for us is identifying what industry best aligns with our given resources and our assets that we do have.
and that's why we've been focusing on the smaller type of electronic.
Yeah, and I think that you're getting traction, and that's all good.
When you get to Broome County, for example, they have abundance of natural gas. You go up to the Utica area, because they have a different pipeline up there, they have an abundance of natural gas. That's why it goes down to Richfield Springs.
Well, here's the question becomes to me. Richfield Springs has an abundance of natural gas, but we play hell trying to get any of it committed to an industrial park. So yes, they have it, but must be figured out how to access it. We seem to be frustrated in getting that done. So I mean,
It's almost like putting a map and regionalizing, right? Like, here's what they offer, here's what they have available, right, currently, and then really kind of doing that almost through the, I'd say upstate New York, not gonna go downstate.
The other question to me is, do we believe nice? I mean, when the yogurt or Chobani went in, the investment in the substation they put in up there was correct.
Well, and that's what NICEAG is saying. They said until Andela actually commits to building her building and comes up with plans for that they won't invest.
well, let me say, Chobani is such that,
Giovanni said they were going to expand. Actually,
well, no, I get Cuomo got in the middle of it, and all of a sudden, all the cans became cans because, when he on a flood, he was over in Margaretville, or no phone service, about 90 days of a tower to get phone service. So, we live with all the constraints until somebody wants to actually change something. Now, that's a home run. I don't think you plan on a home run, but first it's assessing. I don't think we're not going to solve the whole problem this morning. First, to me, if we can assess what we do have, what's our advantage we have, and what does everybody else have, where do we stand? What can we target? We talk about marketing to the city and everything else. We had a better idea of what we could match up with. It might be easier to market a little more intelligently. Does that make sense?
Targeted.
Target market, and so without spending some time, and there's got to be a consultant that does this too. Not that I want to do another study. I want to get some results, but unless we quantify some things, measure some things, I don't know how, we're just trying hard without a plan.
Let me just ask a quick question. Andrew, Craig, the deadline for Otsego County budget, basically, when is that final product put together to be voted on?
We're having our first budget meeting on this Friday, but the final budget's not voted on until December. But the request, I think the request from Otsego Now, would go through IGA committee. I think ideally it would be a formal request be presented at the September IGA meeting, which would be on the next IGA meeting would be the 13th. So I think that would really, you would want that request to be presented, and then IGA would essentially approve it, or basically sign off on it, and it would go to the budget committee.
We have in about 4 weeks, we really need to put something on the table, pretty much. No, I do. I'm just saying timeline. Having done an awful lot of budgets, unfortunately, whichever the case may be, there's a timeline that after a certain point makes it really difficult to change anything.
Well, I think we're mixing two different things. One is that I requested to increase our budget from 75,000 to like 275.
Right.
That's just for our operating. That has nothing to do with making us competitive. That's really to allow us to provide healthcare benefits, to provide retirement through the state retirement systems, to balance our budget. When you talk about how do we become competitive, that's a different financial issue.
Yes, I think all I'm saying is, I don't disagree with anything Alan is saying, and maybe refining our focus, but in the meantime, we really need to make a presentation on September 13th. And we go and we support 250, we support whatever. Mm-hmm. But I think we have to do that on September 13th.
Did he mean August?
Well, let me say that to me, this isn't something that gets solved in 60 days. To me, yes, we ask for some more money now, but I think if we spend the next 6 months or what, consult results, get targets, and we're not really going to the board with a vision of where we think the IDA should go or where they can go. And here's our information that leads us to believe that, and then ask for that vision to be financed. And I don't think we have a right to ask for the money if we don't have a plan. Right, expansion of what it would return and what. So to me, it's a short term. Yes, we need some more money just to survive and keep healthy. But one of the challenges for 23 is to come up with a clear vision of what industries we think we can target, what we think we can do, what our logistics allow us to do. you know, so we're a little more focused and have a little more cohesive presentation and execute a plan. We can't sit on go forever and, you know, we have.
I do feel like Jody did put that together, so that's, I guess in my mind, I'm still trying to wrap around like the difference between what Jody's already presented for vision. I'm all for planning, don't get me wrong. So, and I think again, it's still separate when you look at, and maybe we need to talk about more in projects, because I don't think you're ever really gonna go to the IDA for funding of infrastructure improvements
Well, that,
or.
if you remember last year, the county authorized and to take $600,000 out of their fund balance for a home for the Richfield Springs. So that was a first, I mean, 3 years ago, they would have laughed us out of it. So at least they're wanting to provide loan financing. What Montgomery County does is they loan their IDA like $2 million for water and sewer improvements into a park, with the understanding that they don't have to repay it until they sell it. So, I mean, so we can approach them.
Other conversations that I've been having for a few years with county board people is, it makes this doable, okay? The county needs, Onondaga County has sewer water authority, where municipal water and sewer become the project of the county government. It makes it more feasible for them to work on projects, getting funds, extending water to an industrial park with fees coming with municipalities. Yeah. It's 15 years, haven't got a drop of water on the south side yet, and we haven't done sewer. So, you know, I think those are some of the things of getting the county in a position to become a civilized place to live, have to come at some point. But back to our little issue, a complete and honest, painful inventory of what our strengths are, what assets we have, I think would help us, you know, with Jody's insight and other things, we can begin to target more and maybe have some more success drawing some business. But there again, drawing a business in when you don't have spec buildings, you don't have, you know, what does everybody else have? Anyway, next item. We're going to beat this dead horse.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to projects because I think that's what we've been asking for. I think Jody's provided some of that already, so I think it might be dusting some of that off and understanding what's lacking, what's missing, what do we need to enhance in it.
And what can we target?
Yeah.
And how can we support your requests in person? At the intergovernmental period meeting.
I think that would be helpful. We have board members in the meeting.
I
can fit it in.
I know, first came here, our chairman used to go quite a lot.
So just shoot me, let's set it up and figure out where we'll be there.
For what it's worth, I don't want to interrupt anybody. I think ultimately in the end, whatever we're doing isn't working at all because no one's responding to anything that we've done so far. So I think we have to change our way of reaching out to people. And I personally don't think a study or in-house or anything, you just need to go outside. That people do the things that they do best. I can always sell my house by myself. I could put a for sale sign out there and maybe get $100,000. But someone who's a professional, you would hope, can sell it. You go pay somebody to get $200,000 for it. We have a staff of 2 that probably don't understanding, but someone has to be aggressive. People aren't just going to not. We sit here and wait for somebody to call. We sit here and wait for New York Central to call and say, hey, I'm looking to go to Oneonta. We're not aggressively going to see, Country Club or Community Bank or New York Central or whoever to come to Oneonta. And that's what has to be done. And it's not rolling across their table every day. At least I'm not seeing in any meetings that I've been at for the 10 years I've been on this board of the 50 phone calls of someone looking for a piece of property and the reason they're not coming. I mean, we can sit and talk about what we don't have all day long. It's easy, but no one cares. We don't have electric. We don't have gas. So we put in there what we can and find somebody who's willing to go out there. I don't think it's really that difficult. Hire a real estate guy. That's simple. We're not doing it in-house. I've been waiting for 2 years. We've talked about it periodically and we've done nothing. So there are people out there that is happening in rural areas where they don't have the electricity. Things are happening. People drive along, you see it. So I just think we need to change. And we don't need another study. We don't need to figure out what industry. We've been through this 17 times since I've been on the board. Jeff's been through it probably 400 times. So it's just a waste of conversation. Go out and find a person who will go out there and aggressively try to find somebody. And just rather than just pushing, all we're doing is pushing paper. The reality on the table is we're just pushing paper, wasting on time on people who we know aren't going to do anything, and we all know who that is. And so, find somebody who's willing that we can pay to put something on the table. And maybe they can't, but at least we're exhausting some other avenue. That's it. Thank you.
Probably more of a project conversation too. But again, I think we're just, it's two different, I mean, this is the problem with, right, a board of this caliber that has this experience and very different tactics and approaches. And that's why, Jody, it has to come back to you. You have to provide the vision and the plan, right? So we can advise all we want. I think, Craig coming is more, let's hit the boots on the ground, let's attract, let's bring people in, where Tom's more coming from long-term plan, and let's put a vision together that then allows us to attract. So it's just different tactics.
Well, the other thing that I go back to Jody's request for money is, currently in my mind, these two people are judicious workers, and at times being used up with the clerical work already required to do what it is we are doing. Without more resources to get more capacity to do more or different things, we're still hamstrung financially. It's so I mean, I don't care how we do it, but yes.
And again, I think, sorry, Jody, I don't mean to beat up on you, but like, we've been asking that for a year or 2 years, right? What's your vision for staffing? What are you going to need from an operational standpoint? Where do you need staff? Is it property management? Is it real estate sales? Is it administrative work? What's clerical? They take, so it still really comes, I think, back to you, Jody, to be able to present a clear vision and a clear path and a clear approach to, again, maintain operating revenues that keep us sustainable, that allow us to support and fund new projects and attracts new business and industry in here. So, I mean, until those things come forward, you can study things, but I think that still comes back to Jody understanding where our niche is, where we have the most opportunity. Again, to Greg's point, do we hire somebody? We talked about, was it a few months ago, about a real estate agent? Like, do we need to get a real estate agent on the books to make sure? The bottom line, I think, from this board, what I'm hearing, and sorry, Jeff, Laura, this feels like it's a bit more projects, but we need to sell land. We need to get businesses here, right? If that is the goal of the board, I think you've been doing a fantastic job with supporting local businesses and doing something. Again, if you do the yearly review, there's a lot of good movement that's taking place, retaining jobs, bringing new jobs in. So are we happy with the current cadence and pace, or are we looking for more? And I think that's really ultimately, again, a project strategic conversation for the board to clearly convey to Jody so that he understands what we're expecting, what we're looking for. What are those goals that we want him to hit? So that'll probably actually lead into governance then.
Okay, so next board meeting in 2 weeks, I'll make that presentation. We won't have much on the agenda other than just.
And I would say, from Craig's comments, you're a nice guy, I'm not, but being a little more aggressive in pursuit with the county board, whatever else, we'll give you support. I mean, I'd be glad to go. Yeah. I'll knock over the desk and you can up the papers when I'm done. But more aggressive and assertive, not aggressive, assertive in your request, and here's why. You get that plan. Yeah. Once again, I'm on record for 20 years. The county should be investing $500,000 in economic development every year just because it's the first item in your budget. It's, you can't save yourself into prosperity. Period.
Well, to speak back to the request of the county, remember this, years ago, we were talking about what do counties normally do to support their economic development efforts. And we had a lot more, I believe, if I recall, we had a lot more that was given to us years ago, and that got cut back. And then we had to kind of go back to the table and ask for money. And it's a chicken or the egg thing. We should stabilize our operations. We should have the money, and it should be supported by the county at some meaningful level. And I would caution against going in and providing a budget that shows this year we got a deficit. Let's just see if we can get a little piece. I appreciate where that's coming from because it's a step up and logically it might be easier to digest. But you don't want to set a precedent that now next year we want to see what your budget says and it shows that you're flush and we're going to move back on what our allocation is. I just think there should be a basic commitment that's there every year, whether you're a little bit positive or a little bit negative. You should have that basic commitment coming in to support economic development. And I totally agree with Craig. Here we sit. I think we all know what our natural resources are and aren't, and we have to get more proactive than reactive.
We should have an operations support that would allow us to hire someone in the middle of the year. If we find that we need, let's say we need a commercial real estate broker or something like that.
Well, I mean, let's be honest, that's the reality of where we're at with the budget, and why additional operational funding is necessary, right? We have no flexibility whatsoever to hire any additional staff.
Absolutely
Yeah,
true.
we're in survival mode and we have to become aggressive and go after it. We can't do it without money.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Jeff was saying.
Yeah.
If it's $250,000 to stabilize us operationally and give us some room, we need to go hire someone, in the last 3 months of the fiscal year, we can do that. We don't have to go, back to the county begging for $40,000. I mean, let's do whatever it is we need to do, and let's go.
And I go with the idea
There
of
be a face.
doing a report card on what you did in the last 12 months, because I think we've done quite a bit.
That's it for me.
So I bring all that up. Actually, I enjoyed it.
Do you want to talk about footballs?
No, not with
Uh, So I think we've kicked around looking forward. Are we done with the 23 budget discussion?
I think so.
Okay. Is there any need to go into executive session for any sale, property disposition, debt, anything like that?
I feel like we should. I don't
There's a
know.
motion to go into executive session?
Then we go into executive session to discuss specific financial concerns
That's not one of the reasons, but.
Financial history of a
with a
corporation.
particular organization. Be more specific.
So Dave, thank you. Do you have a
Okay.
second?
Tom,
Thank you. Okay, let me just.
Assuming,
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we're out of executive session and there was no formal vote or action taken. I think that concludes the Audit and Finance Committee meeting. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
so move.
Thank you.
Are we doing governance next?
Governance, yeah.
You're up, Andrew.
All right. I think the main thing on our agenda is the remote access policy.
If we could also do the minutes.
Oh, the minutes? Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, is there can we approve the previous meeting's minutes?
Second.
Thank you.
So I'm assuming we're all voting for that, so yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Feel good about it.
All right, great. So the we had a previous discussion about the remote access policy. We were provided one, by a template by Joe Scott or Joe Scott's office. And I mean, Megan and I were discussing this. This is, this is kind of how that email resulted from Megan, because I mentioned her. The county is still meeting. We're still allowed because of the suspension of the emergency or the extension of the executive order by the governor. So that's she had followed up with Joe Scott. So one thing that we had just talked about was that the previous meeting with Senator Seward or Jim Seward. I don't know if we need to go back and address anything in the minutes because the executive order was still extended at that point. So he should have been counted as quorum and as a voting member when he called into that meeting. So, I think that's just worth pointing out. And that order, whatever, Megan, was it August 14th, August 15th, 13th?
Yeah, it expires.
So the speculation that, at the county level is that we're going to continue to see the governor extend that order. So we'll, like Joe Scott said, he'll let us know. But we'll know pretty soon here on the county side of things. But from what I've heard, the perception is that this might go until the end of the year. As long as COVID's going, we think it will continue to be extended by the governor. So anyway, that that has nothing to do with our policy, although it in the policy it is specifically referenced, the template policy that is that all members can participate, as long, and they actually reference the emergency executive order. So I think that's good to have that in the policy, especially given these circumstances. But once this eventually ends, I think this policy, I told Megan, I just looked at the county policy a little more closely. I think this policy has more detail and it, better definitions. And I think that, my only question is that, it definitely integrates what's now allowed under New York State law with open meetings law in terms of, kind of this definition of unexpected circumstances or whatever extraordinary circumstances. And it, and I think this is pretty broad, disability, illness, death, caregiving, or any other significant or unexpected factor. I mean, that gives a lot of flexibility. I think that this, the way this policy is structured, it would allow, one or a small number of board members to participate by remote access as long as there's a quorum in the physical location, which is the one drawback. But until New York State open meetings law changes, there's not much we can do about that. The only question I had is it talks about meeting notice and so I think there's two components in here. I think one is the extraordinary circumstances where someone can participate in a meeting not being in a public location, and then there's someone who could participate and they are in a public location and that would be noticed. And I wasn't quite clear, or do you all think it's clear that, the distinction, because my understanding is in extraordinary circumstances, we would not be able to notice that individual is participating by video conference. So it could literally be, the morning of or the day before, and we wouldn't be able to put out a notice saying that person is going to join by video conference. Whereas if you wanted to in advance, we could easily notice that and put your location, or maybe not if it's a non-public location. I mean, there's a couple different scenarios, and I guess, is it clear to everyone that the noticing part of it is clear for our policy?
It was my understanding you have to notice regardless.
But so you always have to put out a notice, but say Andrew for the meeting, yes. So say Andrew lives in Cooperstown and he wants to do the meetings at the county board chamber. He could do that, and we could disclose that when I put out the notice that Andrew will be there, and then the public can attend there. And then Andrew is a voting member. It's unclear to me if he's now counted he would be counted, I believe, towards a quorum, because that's the physical location, and so he would be counted even though he's technically virtual to us, we're virtual to him. So that's okay. In the case of someone having an extraordinary circumstance, I'm allowed to put that in a notice the morning of. There's no time requirements, whereas our normal notices have to be posted 3 days prior. So you
would literally put out a notice that morning. That's what you're saying?
Yes, but you could be in your house and I don't have to disclose where you are, but there still has to be a quorum at our physical listed addresses. So, and there was some confusion. I rewatched the June meeting and Joe Scott kind of contradicted himself, where he said first there needs to be a quorum, and then he said there doesn't, and there does need to be a quorum in the physical location. So,
well, the policy definitely says that.
Irrelevant. I feel like this whole thing is relatively irrelevant, right? I mean, other than Andrew, your situation might be a good example of if you want to participate from Cooperstown, so you don't have to travel here. That to me is all we're doing here. Bottom line is, if you can't show up and you have to attend virtually, you're not a voting member, and you're not counted towards the quorum. And if you
So-
can't make it, you can't make it. You don't come that day.
Right, like you technically can vote.
Nothing.
If
No,
you're
no,
not-
but if we adopt this policy, and again, this is what's allowed, under the governor, they provided kind of this middle ground, and I think part of this is a result of COVID and people embracing video conferencing for meetings like the IDA, like the county, and other towns and villages, other municipalities. The middle ground is the extraordinary circumstances. So if we adopt this policy and someone had an extraordinary circumstance as we're defining it in this policy, which is these 6 points, which could be a car accident, could be illness, could be caregiving for your kid.
Ridiculous, right? Just don't come to the meeting. It's not like we're ever voting on something that's so earth-shattering, timely, important that if we can't get a quorum or can't get a vote in, then I'm going to ask somebody that just had a car accident to come on.
Either way, you still need
Maybe car accidents.
last
need the quorum
minute,
here.
putting out the notice is like,
If
sounds
you
like.
if you have if that person is quorum,
They're not, though. They're
No,
not.
but I'm just saying if they were quorum, they could still count and vote. As long as
No, not if it's an extraordinary circumstances noticed that morning. That's where Joe Scott went back and forth.
Yeah, because it says right here, under section 4, the agency may at its discretion to conduct a remote access meeting and permit a member to participate, provided that a quorum of members are present in the identified physical location. So even if you tell me that you have a
quorum. Yep.
and you come virtually, I still need 5 people here, or at
Yes.
Cooperstown or wherever we post it.
We should ask if that's what the open meetings law definitely.
Well, let me say, all the governor needs to do is say, look, it's a public meeting. If you're the public want to come, you can still come here like you always could. Why is it they come to your house and have coffee with you while you're sitting on a remote meeting? That's the part of this.
Yeah,
I find
all of
quite-
it is ridiculous.
It's insane. They're rolling out a non-functional operation. It makes it irrelevant. I mean, I personally, I think you should be able to log in where you are and participate. And if you can't vote, okay. But if anybody wants to, you should be able to do it from home. We know who you are, and the public can still come here because the public could come here. Whether we're all here or 3 of us are here, the public can be here and hear everything we hear. So I don't understand. It's government solving a problem, making one that's more complicated as a result.
I think we still need the policy because regardless of some of some of these elements, we still need a policy that defines, we have to broadcast the meetings, we have to record them. At least that's my understanding. And that, just by that requirement, we have to allow the general public the opportunity to possibly attend the meeting virtually.
This policy is changing. That policy already exists.
If I'm remote, I don't want them to come into my living room.
I don't think we have a policy, right, Megan? We do not have a policy in place.
We don't have a policy, but I think what you're saying is that prior to
regulation.
COVID, we already knew that January 1st, 2020, we had to stream our meetings, that the public had to be given access to be able to either come virtually or to come in person, and that they had to be recorded and posted to our website. So we're already doing that stuff just by stating you don't
Right, I understand. But I guess the way I'm looking at it is the same thing with the county. The county, we just made some updates to our video conferencing policy. If you don't, like at the very end, Appendix A, if we don't define kind of, if you want to make a comment, raise your hand. If we don't outline these things, then we have no enforcement mechanism, because we don't have a policy to point to. So, so if somebody comes on and we tell them, well, you can't speak or you have to raise your hand, and we don't have a policy that outlines that. And the county just went to this whole issue with people recording, in a not in an open meeting, but in other county meetings. We just made some clarifications to our video conferencing policy around people recording actual, like personal meetings outside of our committee meetings and board meetings. This policy is something we could build on depending
Yeah.
on issues or circumstances.
Andrew, are you making a motion or are you asking somebody to make a motion to adopt this?
I think so. I mean, I think we should just adopt it and then we can improve on it. That would be the easiest path forward, in my opinion.
Nothing burger, so don't
Yeah,
matter.
I don't care.
I'll make a motion to adopt the remote access for the,
It's gonna have to go to the board.
Oh, okay.
yep. I'll make a motion.
Dave.
This is to the full board?
Consented.
And there is we do have, I think Joe Scott gave it out last time, the questions and answers. There's a whole bunch of questions on public bodies and what they can and can't do that are answered. I may have sent it to you the other day, Andrew. But that outlines some of that. I know that it says, Appendix A, which is public comment. And I have that there too. Was that on yours? Because I know there was one that was originally sent without Appendix A.
There is an Appendix A that
Public comment
It-
operating.
it says public comment operating procedures. Yes, that's exactly what I was referencing. Yep.
Yeah, so we have that in there as well.
Yeah, that would be a part of this policy that we would be adopting.
Right, yeah. Vice Chair limited comment. Okay, well, you already. All in favor?
Yes.
Job description? Okay, also in your pack, there is a job description for the Otsego County Innovation Center Director, also a marketing person. We probably should have done project first, because that would explain a lot of these. But we are anticipating getting an Appalachian Regional Commission grant of $150,000 for our Innovation Acceleration Center to start. As part of their funds, $66,000 is to finance the center director's salary for 18 months. And this was the job description that was sent to the Appalachian Regional Commission about a year ago, which they approved. So this is bringing it to the governance committee to say, this job description is okay.
I mean, I think it's a good starting point, and obviously, if it comes to fruition, we'll go back and look at this more.
Yes.
So. We need a motion to move it on to full board.
Yes, I assume so. And the other thing I forgot to bring up is Juneteenth,
Yes.
federal holiday.
Yeah.
We probably should have this committee recommend adopting that as to our policy to add an official holiday. I realize.
Which one you giving up?
I don't know.
Oh, just checking. But I'm all for it, but I just want to trade something back.
We found that, well,
Let me see, I think it's duly noted, should be.
I actually worked that day because we had.
You had a public hearing then.
I think I worked that day too.
And then the last thing on the agenda is, I'm looking at the ability for us to join the New York State retirement system. It's not for my benefit because I'm already part of that system through a previous employment. But for all of our existing staff, future staff, the incentive, I think would be worthwhile. The big question I've got to get from them is how much it's going to cost.
The breakdown of that.
Eligibility is not the issue.
I'm sorry.
Eligibility is not the issue.
Does she have to become an employee of the county?
No, you don't have to become an employee of the county, but they want to know how much, for some reason, they want to know how much financing we receive. Which is why I'm making a push to get an increase.
Variable.
There's a standard formula that they use based on salary and then based on changes year to year. Not, it seems like it makes sense.
So that's all I have for governance.
So just one thing I want to note, Megan, if you can, for the next meeting, Andrew, I would propose we put on the agenda item, a review and division of goals for Jody with board expectations, much like we talked about from the finance committee, really to understand so that we're all on the same page of what we are expecting and how we are expecting our role to be in that
Board or for the next
for the
government?
next governance, right? That would be about, right, we do,
December.
yeah, so that would seem like it would be good timing as we go into the next year. Unless you would recommend something else, Andrew. I just feel like, again, we kind of on the governance, we started goals a couple of years ago. I don't think we did any last year that I'm aware of, but I feel like that's kind of on our plate to kind of, even at the same time, evaluation of his performance.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that sounds like a good plan.
Okay. Sure. Make a motion to adjourn?
I'll
Yes.
second it.
Right, we're gonna try to keep this.
Yeah, let's go back.
Keep it light.
I'll call the project committee meeting to order. I'll forego the chairman's comments. Any comments, questions on the July 14th project meeting minutes? Now I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Taking a look at the project trackers, Jody, if you can quickly go through these, I do want to note that I've asked Jody to put together an Innovation Acceleration Center project charter, which is still, I think, it's there, but I think it's still being kind of honed and refined as this project starts to come more in focus. So I don't know, Jody, where you'd like to start, if you'd like to start.
All right, we'll start with that one. Basically, we're going to be tracking two different grant programs. One is for the current operations through the Appalachian Regional Commission. The Department of State approved this project back in January. It went before the Appalachian Regional Commission. Their staff reviewed it and made recommendations last week to move it on to their full board of directors for approval. So that one is being tracked separately because it has specific components regarding the equipment supplies. The second one is a little bit more up in the air. It includes the acquisition of a building for breakdown by USDA. We have a grant application that should be decided by October 15th. At the same time, New York State Empire State Development is also making their recommendations for grant funding. They would put in about 50% or 25%, 10% of the grant total project cost, about 165,000. So if those two are awarded, then we'll sit down and actually make a decision as to whether or not.
So that's just obviously the biggest timeline is the October timeframe.
Right. So I just started this. I didn't want to go back and go through the history of what last year. Start fresh, starting this month. Regarding the Oneonta rail yards, we have been working with the Grant Group. They've been second meeting with us in this. They're now doing detailed different scenarios for types of manufacturing office space that could be developed there and what the energy consumption would be for community geothermal would work on those scenarios. I did get confirmation from Peter Fontana that he is coming. I believe it's next week, next Tuesday. And he'll be here around 2 o'clock. I hope you know that Jeff Joyner wants to be at that meeting as well.
I don't know if I can make it, but if you could just send me an invite.
Yep.
I'd be happy to come to that meeting too. Okay.
Would that be at the rail yard site itself or here?
No, he's coming directly to our office here.
Can you shoot me an email also? If it's confirmed?
Yes, great. Yeah, we'll be here Tuesday, 8/16, around 2 o'clock. He wants to come directly to our office, but I'll send everybody.
Yep.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
you know where the corporate office is located?
He's out of Philadelphia, so I'm not sure that's his corporate office. Just curious. Last thing on the rail yards is that Rambo has contacted Corning to see if they can incorporate them into this study as well. And they're also the architects and engineers for Corning. So they would have a better handle as to whether they're going to look at this site as the rail yards or whether they want to expand further.
Is the draw the rail yard the opportunity zone?
Yes,
Because the other site's sitting on the same aquifer, so.
right. That's one of the benefits of them looking at this site is that they would be entitled to. Richfield Springs, did talk to Joe Scott. He is working on the water and sewer agreements. He did have a meeting with Kurt phone, and to schedule a call with the village and the town later this week. I believe he actually talked to the town attorney yesterday. We also applied for another $500,000 grant from Southern State. That goes first to them. They made a recommendation to send it to the Department of State. Department of State likes the project. And the Department of State claims that they're going to talk to the Economic Development Administration and try to have them agree to be as the lead agency in this. They think it's very positive, and they understand our need for another $500,000 for this construction project.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm concerned about the dates on this one. I just feel like it's dragging.
We're gonna go forever. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and no fault, just
Yes.
nothing moves.
Yeah.
Just everything's a roadblock.
Well, the other thing was that we did schedule a meeting with Senator Overacker. This is where my city had agreed now to move ahead with the project. We pointed out to them that there's no cost to them. They were hedging the whole thing, saying we don't want to design and build and construct something if you don't have a tenant. We said it's not going to cost you anything because it's already in the grant that we have budgeted. That's really what changed their mind. So they are requested support letters that Larry Friggett is working on from the town councilman to gather to submit with their application to the Public Service Commission. They want to have all the documentation documented by August 20th. So they're actually moving ahead.
And they're going to provide the spec.
They claim that the only specs they have on this product is just the size and the length of the line, which they've already provided. So just add that down to the specs and contractors.
Yeah.
So we're still working on bid documents then.
The bid documents are done. What it is, and I'm reading it, Mark from Keystone was supposed to talk to his boss about getting this done. What he can do is it's a form that they have to fill out that shows where in the bidding documents, what page EDA's requirements are included in those bid documents. That's the thing we're waiting.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll go out to bid within a month.
You get materials are tremendous. Weight, you get materials. Physical weight.
A little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say it is.
Yeah.
Starting to really popping up in new areas.
Yeah.
Any other questions on any of the key projects?
Nope.
Move to the director's report. Any highlights from that, Jody, you'd like to bring forward?
We did have a meeting with Vibrant Brands and discussed with them the potential changing our digital campaign to be more specific on electronics and advanced manufacturing electronics. He really indicated that he liked that proposal better to target in Binghamton, Utica, Albany, or local areas for that type of. It's a way of really quantifying much better if we have people interested in our digital campaigns that see how many actual referrals we get from that. We're supposed to schedule a meeting, I believe, next week with Paper Kite, which I haven't done yet, to go over that change. Systematic power systems. I am somewhat amazed, but Scotty Johnson signed the grant agreements and signed the identification agreements that the town would require. So we're pretty much good to go on this grant. The only thing we're waiting for is, for some reason, the town hasn't supplied us a copy of their workers' comp certificate. They sent us the city's workers' comp. So I'll follow up again with them today on this. I followed up yesterday with them. And they are very anxious, IOCS, to go ahead and start ordering. So, and I have a lot of high regard for Amy that she'll keep this project on track, and they will actually create 30 new jobs.
Good deal.
Air structures, air structure American technology. We work with them on submitting a $100,000 grant from this Chandler State Development. Approximately 7 new positions created. They want to have an expansion of the building. Cost, so it's roughly 20% of the cost. It is 20% of the cost. The Oneonta Business Park. New York State Historic Preservation Office finally accepted our phase 2 archaeological study that was done 6 years ago. They are now waiting for comments from the Indian nations. They have until the end of the month to make comments on it. So hopefully that will be resolved.
That would preclude, if there's no comments or concerns, preclude us from doing any further studies. We would just essentially.
That's what I'm thinking.
Would it at all reduce the site area that is untouchable?
If there are no further comments and they agree, and they say you're clean to go, then it would not reduce anything.
Okay, so it would be completely, okay, gotcha.
We could use the whole park.
The whole park would be open to us. Okay. Okay.
Hope they sleep till September.
Super.
Okay.
So in a nutshell, that's kind of what.
One quick one. Saw something in the yogurt.
Yeah, so that's the letter. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I put in here was, when Tom initially talked to me about I thought he was focusing just on the business parks. Why aren't we getting anybody in there? And so I went back and looked at some of the requirements that some of these companies have. And on the yogurt company, this was a specific one where they were talking about electric. And we approached NYSEG about what we can do to get electric upgraded to accommodate this firm. On the second page, it really talks about what the cost would be to upgrade it to their specifications, which is about a little over $2 million. So we would have to come up with $2 million to find that upgrade.
Would the electric be available if we pay for the upgrade? I mean, have
At this site, yes. At the Oneonta Business Park, they said they can't even upgrade it.
Which site was this?
This is the Oneonta.
Okay.
So at that site, we could upgrade it to meet those type of specifications.
So I thought this was a new lead. I was looking at these and it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Like, this doesn't make any sense. All right. So you were just demonstrating essentially, potentially why we've lost in the past or why we haven't won in the past based on different needs and motives.
Right. We did.
Corny.
There was another project called Project Discovery
Okay, so, yeah, bottom line, yeah, we can't support the needs of a lot of industries without substantial infrastructure updates.
Well, the other thing I wanted to,
So now they can charge.
Somebody else
make more money.
exactly.
right, and that's really why we're focusing on the smaller electronics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because also, there was another Project Independence, that we had actually a site selection company come up from North Carolina and look at some of our sites. And one initial from the consultant, the lack of natural gas is a concern that must be addressed. 1 million square feet of building will be a lot of heat needed in the winter, and the need to have deliveries will be pretty regular unless there's some huge tanks. Quick math is that they need at least 5 million BTUs per hour during the winter,
Yeah,
which is
not
about,
happening.
it's just unrealistic. We're gonna have a distribution center because of that.
Yeah, there's huge physical spaces.
And they claim it's really, they can keep the heat on for the sprinkler systems, and if the sprinkler systems fail, and they have a fire, they've lost
And I
it.
lost everything. Okay. Got excited and then doing movement. Okay. New and unfinished business, leasing of office space.
Yeah, we were contacted by, there was a woman actually, and she was looking for office space if we had any available. It was actually for her husband. They're both working home and she kind of wants to get him out. And he works for the International Food Policy Research Institute. So we explained to him that, there is a likelihood that this building could sell, we may not be here. But he's still interested in moving into that office. It's kind of across from me. So we told him it would be the same amount that we charged Congressman Delgado for the old office, because that's the original one that we gave him, but he wanted one with the window, so the one across. So,
Should have charged him a premium if he gets a window.
yeah.
What's that charge?
We told him 500 a month.
Cheap.
It's cheaper to get him out of her hair.
In terms of lease agreement, is there a time frame that we commit to that, or?
So he wants to do a 6-month lease,
Okay.
just to see how it goes, to see if it's something that he wants to keep going. They just bought a house in Otsego, I forget where they're from. But yeah, so he said 6-month lease, and then of course, if anything happens, he's well aware that there's potential that we may not be.
They'd be a good fit with Kate.
Okay.
I was gonna say again, and then in terms of understanding the fit with, okay,
Yeah, they don't, and not necessarily us, but they definitely fit with Kate's doing. So
do you need a motion for that, or?
I think we explained to him that we were gonna tell you guys. I don't necessarily think.
I mean, to me, that's a decision you guys can make in terms of
Yeah.
that you want to manage the space,
Yeah.
awareness.
No,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I think it makes the alignment with what our vision is for this space, and then ultimately just being concerned about what happens with each other.
to go for it.
And then the business park, that was what you guys just.
Yeah, that's.
Okay. So you're saying we're.
Beat that dead horse to death.
All right, any other new or unfinished business?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thanks, Dave.
Been a long time. Good meeting, really. Actually covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think